show you how some of the quilts that I've made using the Sew Inspired design system. The quilt that's on the table here is a quilt that I do is kind of a sampler, and this is something, if you've joined my Sew Inspired Design Club, this quilt is a great way to, if you don't have time to make a quilt each month, to utilize the templates each month, make 4 blocks, and this has basically sampler blocks of each quilt. So if you can make 4 blocks each month, then you can go ahead and put these blocks together, and then at the end of your 12 months you'll have a full sampler quilt. So this is a great one, and it has all the different blocks included in it. Now this quilt over here, which is my random scrap quilt, is a great one to do, and the way I did this quilt, it was a lot of fun and it was real easy. All you have to do to make this quilt is select about 5 fabrics and just start cutting out pieces with your templates. It doesn't matter which template blocks you're going to use, just cut enough pieces for each block, and then you'll be able to go ahead and make your blocks. Don't pay any attention to how you're making them, and then you can mix and match the blocks once they're put together. Because of the common seam points, you can see how all of my seams all flow together because of the way the fabrics are. So you can see all this orange that kind of flows together and the purple that flows together. There was no planning whatsoever in that quilt. The hardest thing I had to do when I made that quilt was to stop turning the blocks, because there was a million ways I could have put that quilt together. The next quilt I'm going to show you is my football block. And that quilt is done using my flying football block and the 2-piece drunkard's path. And this particular one was done with my 6-inch templates, but it could be done with either size to make a different size quilt. This was done with what I call a split design, and I will talk about that in a future video. But you can do the same thing without the split design, and that is actually one of the patterns that you get with the Sew Inspired Design Club. So that's a great one, and it's a fun one to do. And again, doing a perfect circle is simple and easy, and you will have no problem getting your circles to match up when you do that. Now the next quilt over here is this red and gold quilt, is my spinning pinwheels quilt that includes my winding curves block as well as my wave block. And the nice thing about this quilt is you're using 3 different sets of templates, the winding curve, the wave, and the spinning pinwheels. And with the winding curve and the wave, you can make a wavy border around any quilt that uses 9-inch blocks or 6-inch blocks. So if you ever wanted to put a wavy border around your quilts, this is the 2 sets that will be able to do it for you. Now let's talk about the next quilt. This is my winding curves quilt. Now this is a real fun quilt, and you can see all of my seams just flow together, and that is because you will always get accurate blocks when you use your Sew Inspired design system because of the fudge factor that's built into my templates. You're never again going to have to worry about how am I going to get these seams to match up. When you use the Sew Inspired Design Club, you'll always have no problem, just like I have had no problem. It's not how good I am, it's the tools that I use to be able to do that. So anybody else can use my tools and get the same results. The next quilt I'm going to talk to you about is my spinning fan quilt. There is a pattern on my website, if you join the Sew Inspired Design Club, that you actually get the pattern for that. And that is a combination of what I call combining my Sew Inspired design blocks with what's referenced in my Spinning Pinwheels book as basic building blocks. A basic building block is any block that's divisible by 3, the same way that my templates are. So something like a 6-inch half-square triangle, as I've done right here, you've got a 3 by 6-inch rectangle and a 3-inch half-square triangle, and they're all going to fit together to make that 9-inch block. So it makes it really easy to be able to mix and match your Sew Inspired design template blocks with any block like a 9-patch or 6-inch half-square triangles. The next quilt I'm going to show you is done using a combination of my blocks. The center of the quilt is using the flying football blocks. So you've got the 4 little petals of your flower, or each flying football blocks. In the corners of each corner you have the triple drunkard's path, which is the winding curve templates. These 2 blocks over here are mirrored images of the shooting arrow block, and the little hump you see at the top here is using a 2-piece drunkard's path, which is done using my winding curve. So you have a nice combination of all of these blocks, and they all fit together perfectly because all the seam points match up on the Sew Inspired design system. The next quilt I'm going to show you is my spinning fan block that incorporates the winding curves in the corner. This quilt was made putting the spinning fans in the center, and those little circles you see on the outside are my winding curves block. It's a real easy quilt to make, and it's very few blocks, and you'll have a perfect, beautiful quilt. This was done using the 6-inch, but it can also be done in the 9-inch blocks. This quilt over here, it's my spinning Pinwheels quilt, the flower in the vase. All the directions for that quilt are actually in my Spinning Pinwheels book. This quilt here is one of my winding curve quilts. It is an art quilt that I made using my winding curves. The main difference between this quilt and some of my other winding curves quilt is that the edges are not square. Well, the secret to doing a quilt with unsquare edges was a rotary cutter. So it's real easy to do it. You make your quilt and then you cut away the curves as you decide you want them in the end. So it's a fun quilt to do, and it's great for art quilts. That's just a few examples of some of the quilts that you can make using the Sew Inspired Design System. And when you join the Sew Inspired Design Club, you'll have all these templates available for you to use.